So we are here once again to start our discussion on the PT 365. So this is the updated study material for December 2025 to 26. Okay, so we'll start from the one by one from polity, governance, and social issues. So let us start. So the first topic that is there is the delimitation. Okay, so before we start discussion, let us see what are the topics that we are supposed to cover under part of polity, governance, and social issues. So around 10 issues are there. So 15 pages. Okay, so 10 to 11 pages we need to cover. So let us start. So it will take around 40 minutes, so be with me for 40 minutes and I will explain you all those things which are important. So polity, governance, and social issues. So first thing is the delimitation. Okay, so if you see in 2024 prelims, UPSC has asked already a question on delimitation. They have asked how many delimitation commission has been constituted so far. Okay, so that you must remember. So southern states have expressed concerns that the population based delimitation of Lok Sabha is unfair. Why southern states are expressing their concern that population based delimitation of Lok Sabha seats is unfair? Because of the fact that the northern states have been increasing their population consistently, whereas the southern states have been successful in stopping their population growth. Okay, so they have taken many population population decreasing measures. Okay, that is why they are opposing this. Why? Because at this point of time, what will happen if the population based delimitation of what the Lok Sabha seats are carried out? Then the southern states will have less number of seats as compared to the northern states. So that is what is the reason they are giving. Okay, because southern states are doing very well to keep the population in check, whereas northern states are not doing well. Now let us try to understand what is delimitation. Okay, so delimitation is the process of fixing the number of seats and boundaries of territorial constituencies in each state for the Lok Sabha and legislative assemblies. Okay, so if you see our discussion video on the newspaper also, The Hindu, we have already discussed about delimitation many a times. Okay, you can just search on this YouTube channel and you will find this. Anyway, so delimitation is what? Delimitation is the process of fixing the number of seats and boundaries of territorial constituencies in each state for Lok Sabha and legislative assemblies. Basically, you all know that in general sense we can say you all know that if you want to elect an MLA, then you will have a territory, defined territory from where an MLA will be elected by you. Okay, so that is what is the process of that is also done by the delimitation, that how much area will be a part of will be a part of a constituency for MLA election. Okay, Vidhan Sabha. Okay, and then similarly for the Lok Sabha, means how much area, to what extent an area will be covered by an MP. Okay, so suppose there is a Jaipur and constituency for MP. So what are the part that will be the part of the that Jaipur constituency? So all these things are prepared and determined by the delimitation. Okay, so it is done by a high powered body known as the delimitation commission, boundary commission. Okay, so who carry out this process of fixing the number of seats and boundaries of territorial constituencies in each state for Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies? So it is done by a high power body known as delimitation commission. Okay, which is also known as the boundary commission. Okay, so now previous delimitation, so four times so far delimitation commissions have been constituted. So first was in 1952, then 1963, then 1973, and latest one is the 2002. Now here is the history of the delimitation commission. So 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, it has froze seat allocation in the Lok Sabha to states and division of each state into territorial constituency till the year 2000 at 1971 level. Then comes the 84th the Constitutional Amendment Act 2001, which extended freeze until 2026 and empowered readjustment based on 1991 census. Okay, Then comes 87 Amendment Act 2003, delimitation based on 2001 census without altering seat allocation to each state in Lok Sabha. Okay, so right now the seats allocation to the Lok Sabha and State Assembly is done on the basis of 2001 census. Okay, so let us see the constitutional provisions that are important for us. So first is the Article 82 and 170. So it provides for the adjustment and division of each state into territorial constituencies, parliamentary constituencies, and assembly constituencies. Then comes Articles 330 and 320. 332, refixing number of seats reserved for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. Now, orders of delimitation commission cannot be challenged in court. It means that it is exempted from the judicial review. Okay, so this the order of the delimitation commission shall be final, and there will be no court of appeal that will lie against the order of the delimitation commission. Okay, so no modifications are permissible by House of People and the State Legislative Assembly. Okay, so no modifications. What does it mean? That it simply means that whatever orders the delimitation commission brings up, it will not be modified by the Lok Sabha or the State Legislative Assembly. Okay, it means that even the Parliament cannot do anything with the order of the delimitation commission, and State Legislative Assembly also cannot do anything. Okay, it will be final. It comes into effect on a date specified by President of India. Now, who decides the date on which it will be enforced? So, it will be decided by the President of India. Then Kishore Chandra Changanlal Rathore versus Union of India 2024. The Supreme Court held that constitutional courts have the power to review orders or delimitation commission if an order is manifestly arbitrary and irreconcilable to the constitutional values. Now this is very important. Okay, so earlier what we saw, that the delimitation the order of the delimitation commission shall be final and it cannot be challenged in any court or in any court. Okay, but in the recent 2024 judgment, Supreme Court held that constitutional courts have the power to review. Constitutional courts are the Supreme Court and the High Courts. Okay, have the power to review orders of delimitation commission. Okay, so they can review the orders of the delimitation commission when if an order is manifestly arbitrary. Okay, so manifestly means it is evident that the order is arbitrary and irreconcilable to the constitutional values, and it is going against to the constitutional values, then the court can step in. Okay, so that is the thing. So please remember that now delimitation orders of the delimitation commission is subject to the judicial review to some extent. Okay, so limited judicial review will be there on the delimitation commission as per this rule. Okay, so that we have to remember. Now Panchayat's extension to schedule areas act 1996 pesa. So here also you see, if you see the previous question, they have already asked question from this pesa act. Now, why this is news? Recently, the Ministry of Panchayati Raj celebrated 30 years of Panchayat's extension to scheduled areas, PESA Act 1996. So, 30 years of completion have happened of the PESA Act. So, this becomes very important for us. So, salient features we must remember. Let us try to understand. So, Constitution mandate it operationalize Article 243 M4B, extending the provisions of the Part 9 Panchayati Raj to the 5th schedule areas. Okay, so PESA Act is basically about the extending the Panchayati Raj to the 5th schedule areas. Okay, now geographic scope. So 10 states with schedule areas. Andhra Pradesh, it is Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Himachal Pradesh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Rajasthan, and Telangana. Current status: 9 of the 10 states with tribal schedule areas have framed their PESA rules, while Odisha has created draft rules. Now, recognition of tradition. The Act legally recognizes the right of tribal communities to govern themselves. Recognition of tradition. So, the Act legally recognizes the right of tribal communities to govern themselves through their customary laws. Okay, so you all know that the tribals have their own customary laws. So, this Act is simply trying to protect their culture and tradition by allowing tribal communities to govern themselves through their customary laws. Then proportional reservation of seats for STs and SCs and other must correspond to their actual population percentage in the panchayat area. Now STs are granted at least 50% of the seats. Okay, so under PESA 50% seat shall be given to the STs. Every chairperson position at all levels of panchayats in this area must be held by an ST. Okay, so this is very very important. Every chairperson position at all levels of the panchayat in this area must be held by whom? By ST. Okay, a person from ST community. Okay, so that is the thing. Now, nomination of unrepresented tribes. If certain tribal groups lack elected members, the state government has the power to nominate them to the block or district level. So, who has the power? The state government. Okay, so remember this. So, these two things are extremely important, that every chairperson position at all levels of panchayats in these areas must be held by an ST. Okay, and nomination of unrepresented tribes. If certain tribal groups lack elected members, then the state government has the power to nominate them to the block or district level bodies. Now, Indo powers and rights for Gram Sabha, and so we are going to see the comparison between these two areas of mandatory consultation by Gram Sabha. So when there is a land acquisition for the development of projects and for the subsequent resettling or rehabilitating of people impacted by such projects. Okay, so these are the areas of mandatory consultation by Gram Sabha. Okay. So if for the developmental projects land acquisition is necessary, then it is mandatory to take the consultation by the Gram Sabha. Then water bodies, the planning and management of minor the planning and management of minor water bodies, then mining lease, the granting of prospecting licenses or mining leases for minor minerals in scheduled areas, then mineral auctions, the granting of concessions for the exploitation of mineral minor minerals through auctions. Okay, now into powers and rights for Gram Sabha. So intoxicant control, the power to prohibit, regulate or restrict the sale and consumption of any intoxicant. Then forest so the power to prohibit, regulate or restrict the sale and consumption of any intoxicant. Forest produce ownership, absolute ownership rights over minor forest produce. Then land protection and alienation, the power to prevent the alienation of land in scheduled areas and to take appropriate action to resolve, restore any tribal land. Authority to manage village market, control over money lending to estates, and control to manage local development plans and resources, etc. Okay, so consultation of the Gram Sabha, these are the important things, that if you any kind of land acquisition is happening in the area in these areas where the PESA is operational. Okay, in these 10 states. Okay, which are these? So Andhra is there, Chhattisgarh is there, Gujarat is there, Himachal Pradesh is there, Jharkhand is there, Madhya Pradesh is there, Maharashtra is there, Odisha is there, Rajasthan is there, and Telangana is there. Then what will happen? And also remember that only 9 of these 10 states with tribal schedule areas have framed their PESA rules. Okay, while Odisha has created draft rules, so Odisha does not have rules so far. Okay, so all these 9 states will wherever there will be tribal area, what will happen there? There will be if there is a land acquisition is happening, then they must take the consultation from the Gram Sabha. So this is mandatory. So without the consultation of the Gram Sabha, land acquisition cannot happen. Similarly, water bodies, the planning and management of minor water bodies. Okay, minor water bodies means lakes. Okay, lakes, you have lakes, you have a small stream of rivers. Okay, then mining lease, the granting of prospecting licenses or mining leases for minor minerals in scheduled areas. Then mineral auctions, the granting of the granting of consensus for the exploitation of minor minerals through auctions. Okay, and here is the Indo powers and the rights of the Gram Sabha. So intoxicant control, they can control, prohibit and regulate or restrict the sale and consumption of any intoxicant. Then forest produce ownership, absolute ownership, they have the absolute ownership rights over the minor forest produce. Okay, so whatever minor forest produce will be there in the tribal areas, tribal will have the absolute sorry, not tribal, the Gram Sabha will have the absolute ownership over rights over the minor forest produce. Then land protection and alienation, so that the power to prevent the alienation of land in scheduled areas, to take appropriate action to restore any tribal land. Okay, land protection and alienation, so that the power to prevent the alienation, the power to prevent the alienation of land in scheduled areas, and to take appropriate action to restore any tribal land. Okay, so land protection and alienation, so the power to prevent the alienation of land in scheduled areas, and to take appropriate action to restore any tribal land. So land protection and the power to prevent the alienation of land in, so alienation of land, if it is happening in the scheduled area in any of 9 states which have the PESA rules, then then it will be prevented by whom? By Gram Sabha. Okay, and the appropriate action to restore any tribal land will also be done by the Gram Sabha. Others, authority to manage village market, control over money lending to STs, control and manage local development plans and resources. Okay, so these are the very important things, especially these things. Okay, these things can be asked. Mining lease. Okay, then mineral auctions, water bodies, land acquisition. So consultation is mandatory by the Gram Sabha. Okay, and here they have the power and the rights. Okay, power and the rights is with the with the Gram Sabha with respect to the intoxicant control, then for forest produce ownership, then land protection and alienation, and others are also there, like village market management, then control over money lending to STs, control and manage local development plans and resources. Okay, now moving ahead, Prevention of Corruption Act 1988. Why in the news? Recently in Center for Public Interest Litigation versus Union of India 2026 judgment, the Supreme Court delivered a split verdict on the constitutionality of Section 17A of the Prevention of Corruption Act (PCA). And now let us understand. So, what is Section 17A? So, it was inserted by Prevention of Corruption POCA Act 2018, mandates that there should be a prior sanction from the central from the government to launch an investigation against a public servant under this act. Okay, so Section 17A provides basically that if there is a corruption allegation against any public servant, then there should be prior sanctions from the government to launch an investigation against such public servant. Okay, in earlier judgments of Beneath Naren versus Union of India 1997 and Dr. Subramaniam Swamy versus Director CBI 2014, court had invalidated executive and statutory provisions requiring prior sanctions before investigation against senior public servants. Now, key provisions of the PCA 1988. So, punishment for offence relating to public servant being bribed. Any public servant who obtains an undue advantage for dishonest performance of a public duty shall be punishable. Any public servant who obtains an undue advantage for dishonest performance of a public duty shall be punishable with imprisonment not less than 3 years, extendable to 7 years, and fine. Then habitual offender punishable with imprisonment for a term not less than 5 years, extended to 10 years, and fine. Persons authorized to investigate: no police or officer below the following rank shall investigate any offence punishable without the order of a metropolitan magistrate or magistrate of first class. An inspector of police in case of Delhi Special Police Establishment, an assistant commissioner of police in metropolitan areas, a deputy superintendent of police, or a police officer of equivalent rank elsewhere. Now, UN Convention Against Corruption. So, 11th Conference of the State Parties, COSP 11, COSP 11 to the United Nations Convention against corruption concluded with the adoption of Doha Declaration 2025. Declaration calls on states to leverage digital technologies, including AI, to strengthen international law enforcement cooperation in cross-border corruption, etc. United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime acts as secretariat of the countries. Now, UN Convention Against Corruption. It is the only legally binding universal anti-corruption instrument. So, UN Convention Against Corruption is what? It is the only legally binding universal anti-corruption instrument. Please remember this is very very important because UPSC has this habit of asking question, framing questions such a manner that will be confusing. Uh, they are using this only. Okay, so please remember this. It is only legal if a statement appears in the UPSC prelims examination that it is the only legally binding universal anti-corruption instrument, so it will be the correct. Okay, adopted in 2003 by UN General Assembly New York and enforced in 2005. Objective to prevent and combat corruption, promote integrity and accountability, facilitate international cooperation and recover assets obtained through corruption. Signatories and parties: 140 signatories and 192 parties as of September 2025. So 192 are parties. Okay, so they have accepted this, whereas 140 is the signatories, means they have also ratified this by their parliament. Okay, India is a party to convention, so India has not ratified, so our law is not made to give the effect of the UN provisions of the UN Convention Against Corruption in India. Okay, however, India is a signatory to it. Okay, India is a party to it, not signatory. Sorry, it is a party to it. Okay. Now, RFC, what is this? So, the Standing Committee on Rural Development and Panchayati Raj released a report on right to fair compensation and transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation, and reassessment Act 2030. Now, let us understand RFCTLARR. This act aims to provide fair compensation to those whose land is taken away, bringing transparency to the process of acquisition of land to set up factories, infrastructure projects, and ensure rehabilitation of affected. Now, RFCTLARR Act replaced the Land Acquisition Act 1894. Now, what are the key provisions of the RFCTLARR Act 2030? So, it prevents arbitrary acquisitions. So, it defines public purpose to prevent arbitrary land acquisitions, which includes infrastructure projects, urbanization, and industrial corridors. Okay, so land can be so acquisition of land can happen only for the public purpose. Okay, which include infrastructure projects, urbanization, and industrial corridors. Then fair compensation up to 4 times the market value in rural areas and twice in the urban areas. Okay, so if the land acquisition is happening in the rural areas for infrastructure projects, urbanization, and industrial corridors, which are the part of the public purpose, then up to 4 times the market value will be given. Okay, composition. Okay, and then the twice in the urban areas. Now, consent requirement: 80% of affected families for private company projects and 70% in case of PPP. Okay, so consent is also required. So let's take an example that there are around 10 families are living, means 10 houses are there where there is going to be infrastructure project or urbanization or industrial corridor. So out of 10, 8 must give their consent. After which then after this only then after this company this land acquisition can happen. And in case of PPP, public private partnership, 70%, so 10 out of 7. Okay, now return of unutilized land. So if land is not used for its intended purpose within 5 years, it must be returned to the original owners or placed in a land bank. Okay, so it means that if acquisition of land is happening, then the for the purpose of which the land has been acquisition of the land has happened, it must be started within 5 years. Otherwise, it must be returned to the original owners or the place in a land bank. Okay. Now, protection of farmers' land. So, special safeguards for multi-crop and agricultural land acquisition only as to last resort. Now, protection for scheduled areas. No acquisition in scheduled areas violates No acquisition in scheduled area. Violates laws uh, protecting indigenous land rights. Now, social impact assessment. So, before any land acquisition, the government must undertake an SIA study, which is social impact assessment. The consent process must be concluded alongside the SIA. Rehabilitation and resettlement entitlements for affected families, that is, house, financial assistance for livelihood loss, etc. Now, institution setup. So, national and state level monitoring committee for rehabilitation and resettlement, land acquisition, rehabilitation and resettlement authority for speedy disposal of disputes, exemption. So defense, railway, and atomic energy are exempt from the act. However, compensation and RR provisions still apply. Okay. Now, next is the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation Mission. So, a standing committee on housing and urban affairs, 18th Lok Sabha, presented its report titled "Review of Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation." About the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and 2.0, nodal ministry is the urban housing and urban affairs. Okay, and it is a centrally sponsored scheme. Now, center assistance funding. So, category of the city, union territories, northeast and Himalayan states. So, if there is a city less than having less than 1 lakh population, cities 1 to 10 lakh, and cities more than 10 lakh, central assistance you have. Union territory, so 100% will be center contribution. Then northeastern and Himalayan state, it is 90%. Cities less than 1 lakh population, so 50% the central government will give. And cities with the 1 to 10 lakh population, 33 to 0.33%. And cities more than 10 lakh, 25%. Now, key features of the scheme: outcome-based funding. Cities must submit a roadmap to achieve set targets. A community participant with emphasis on women's self-help groups. Payjal survection, a competitive monitoring tool similar to such survection to assess cities on water quality, quantity, and reuse. PPP mandate. Cities with more than 1 million population must implement at least 10% of their allocation through public-private partnership. Technology submission focus on lighthouse projects and supporting water sector startups. Now, key objectives of Amrit 2.0. So, universal water coverage, sewage coverage, okay, and water secure cities. Now gig economic model. So, these all things are not important. So see all these things. Now, POXCO Act. So POXCO Act has been in use, and we have already discussed it lots of time in our newspaper discussion. You can see it. I think in December we were doing the discussion on the POXCO, December and January as well. So, Supreme Court highlighted the misuse of the Protection of Children from Sexual Offences (POCSO) Act in consensual adolescent relationships, and has urged the center to consider a Romeo-Juliet clause to balance child protection with the personal liberty. Now, let us understand the POCSO Act 2012, which is amended in 2019. So, purpose: enacted to protect children below 18 years from sexual assault, sexual harassment, and pornography. Now, gender neutral defines a child as any person below 18 years and applies irrespective of gender of the child or offender. It means that any child means it does not necessarily mean that sexual harassment or sexual assault will happen only to a girl. It can be a boy also. So gender neutral. That is why it has defined gender neutral terms, and that is the child as any person. Any person means either it can be a girl, it can be a boy also below the 18 years, and applies irrespective of gender of the child or offender. Now, categorization of offences: it classifies sexual offences against children into penetrative and non-penetrative assault, aggravated forms, etc., prescribing a stringent punishment ranging from imprisonment to life sentence. Now, punishment for storage of pornographic material involving child. Any person who fails to delete, destroy, or report it shall be fined at least rupees 5,000, and for repeat offences, the fine shall be at least 10,000. Now, reporting of offences. So, any person, including child, who apprehends or knows of an offence must report it to a special juvenile police unit or local police. A special juvenile police unit or local police must report the matter to the Child Welfare Committee and special court or session court if non-designated within 24 hours. Punishment for failure to report case: imprisonment of either description, which may extend to 6 months, or with fine or with phone. Punishment for failure to report case. Okay. So imprisonment of either description, which may extend to 6 months, or with fine or with both. Recording of a statement of child. It shall be recorded at child's residence or place of their choice, preferably by a women police officer of at least sub-inspector rank. Police officer, while recording the statement of child, shall not be in uniform. No child shall be detained in the police station in the night for any reason. Police officers must ensure that child does not come into contact with accused during examination. Special courts ensure speedy in-camera trials within a year, safeguards children from exposure to accused or hostile questioning, mandates compensation and rehabilitation for child victims. Monitoring. National Commission for Protection of Child Rights and State Commission for Protection of Child Rights monitor the implementation of Act's provisions. Now, related news: social media ban for children. Recently, Australia has become the first country to enforce nationwide social media ban for children under 16 under Online Safety Amendment, Social Media Minimum Age Act 2024. So we have discussed Australia. This has this news that Australia has become the first country to enforce a nationwide social media ban for children under 16. We have also discussed it on our newspaper discussion. You can also watch it on our channel. Okay, so far I think 6 topics we have been able to cover. Now I think 3 or 4 pages are left. Okay, so this will be the last page here. So what we are going to do, we are going to increase our speed little bit. Okay. Now, Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhiniyam Bill 2025. So the Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhiniyam Bill 2025 was introduced in Lok Sabha, referred to a joint parliamentary committee. Now, what is this Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhiniyam Bill 2025? So it aims to create a unified regulatory architecture for higher education in India, and NT 66 of the Union List 1 in the 7th schedule to the Constitution. NT 66 of the Union List provides for coordination and determination of standards in the institutions for higher education or research and scientific and technical institutions. Higher education regulatory system. So status, so concurrent list, but technical education is in the union list. Means technical education means you have IITs, IMM. So these are the part of technical education which will be the part of union list, and concurrent list means primary education, secondary education. These will be shared by both by center and the state. Apex regulatory body UGC under the Education Ministry for funding and regulation. Then professional councils, AICT regulates technical education, and statutory bodies like NMC and BCI regulates a specific profession. Accredit, accredit, accreditation bodies, NAC assesses the institution, and NBA accredits the technical programs. Now, major provision of the bill. So Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhisthan. The bill establishes the commission as the apex regulatory body for higher education, and VBSA will not control the funding of institution. Vertical councils under VBSA. So Viksit Bharat Shiksha Biniya Parishad for regulation, Viksit Bharat Shiksha Gunvatta Parishad for accreditation, and Viksit Bharat Shiksha Manak Parishad for academic standards. Repeal. It provides for the repeal of the UGC Act 1956 and All India Council for Technical Education Act 1987 and National Council for Teacher Education Act 1993. Exemption. The bill exempts legal and medical education from its purview. Okay, so it exempts legal and medical education from its purview. This will continue to regulate under separate acts. Now, Supreme Court ruling on the Right to Education Act 2009. The ruling aims to ensure that all schools make available 25% free seats for children from weaker and disadvantaged sections as per section 21, sorry 12 1C of the RT Act. Okay, so one fourth of the total seats will be free for the weaker section and disadvantaged section. Now, key direction: central and state governments to frame and notify rules under section 38 of the RTE Act for implementing section 12 1C. Rule making to be done in consultation with the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, State Commissions, and National State and Advisory Councils. NCPRCR and constituted under the Commission for Protection of Child Rights 2005 are responsible for reviewing, monitoring, and grievances redressal under RTE Act 2009 about right of children to free and compulsory education Act. RT Act, so enacted to give effect to Article 21A of the Constitution. Section 3 grants right of every children 6 to 14 years to free and compulsory education in a neighborhood school till completion of elementary education. Duty of appropriate government and local authority to establish neighborhood schools. Duty of government and local authorities to provide schools infrastructure and teachers learning facilities. Schools are entitled to reimbursement of child expenditure by the state. Okay, now I remember these things. So enacted to give effect to Article 21A of the Constitution. Section 3 grants right of every child 6 to 14 years to free and compulsory education. Free and compulsory education to all children under the age of 6 to 14 years in a neighborhood school till completion of elementary school. In a neighborhood means the school must be close to their home. Neighborhood school till completion of elementary education. Duty of appropriate government local authority to establish neighborhood schools. So you have Anganwadis for that. And primary schools. Duty of government and local authorities to provide schools infrastructure, teachers, and learning facilities. Schools are entitled to reimbursement of pre-child expenditure by the state. Okay, then other constitutional provisions related to right to education. So fundamental duty, Article 51 AK specifies duty of parents to provide opportunities for education or to child 6 to 14 years. Directive principles of state policy. Article 45 directs the state to provide early childhood care and education to children below 6 years. Now, Convention Against Discrimination in Education. So, UNESCO unveiled a report titled "Right to Education: Past, Present, and Future," which reflected on the achievements of the 1960 UNESCO Convention Against Discrimination in Education. So, Origin Convention, it was adopted in 1960 by UNESCO. It is the first legally binding international instrument which is entirely dedicated to the right to education, rights and obligations. It reaffirms education as a fundamental human right and obligates the state to ensure free and compulsory primary education, secondary education accessible and available to all, higher education equally accessible to all on the basis of individual capacity. It bans any form of discrimination in education, etc. Education, etc. India has not ratified it. Okay. Now, doping in sports in India. So, according to annual report for 2025-24 published by World Anti-Doping Agency, found that India has the highest number of dope cheats in the world for the third year. World Anti-Doping Agency, so established in 1999 after the International Olympic Committee convened the first World Conference on Doping in Sport in Lausanne, Switzerland. It resulted in a Lausanne Declaration on Doping in Sport, which provided for the operation of an independent international anti-doping agency to be operational for the uh, to Olympiad in 2000, about an independent national agency composed and funded equally by the Olympic movement and governments of the world to lead a collaborative worldwide movement for doping-free sport. The anti-doping administration management system of the WADA coordinates and simplifies anti-doping activities. Status in India: India reported 260 positive cases for prohibited performance enhancing drugs with a positivity rate of 3.6%. India is followed by France and Italy in absolute number of doping offenders. Now, types of doping in sports. So, beta blockers means drugs reducing stress hormone effects than anabolic steroids. These are not important. Initiative taken to stop doping in India. So the launch of NADA, India Data Administration Management System mobile app in NADA India. Okay, focus on the high performance training centers, then in competition and out of competition testing. Then social media campaigns actively promoting the Know Your Medicine app. Now other important news. So electoral trust. Recently, Election Commission released annual report of contributions received by trust and donations given to political parties for financial year 2024-25. About electoral trust. So electoral trust scheme 2013 provides for establishing electoral trust registered under the Companies Act. They receive donations from individuals, companies, etc., and distribute them to registered political parties. Objective: they aim to enhance transparency and accountability in political funding. Mandate by law: trust must distribute 95% of total contribution received within a financial year to registered political parties. Okay. Regulation: they are required to report to the election commission contributions from individuals and companies and are governed by Income Tax Act 1960. Disclosure: donors and amounts must be mandatorily reported, ensuring traceability. Okay. Now presidential address. So the president addressed the joint sitting of both the houses of the parliament at the start of the budget session. The president can address parliament under Article 86 and 87 of the Constitution. About presidential address. Presidential address, Article 86. Now Article 86, so right of person to address and send messages to the houses, allows the person to address either house of parliament or both house together. Article 87, especially address by the person, provides two instances when the person especially addresses both the houses of parliament assembled together: at the beginning of the first session after each general election to the Lok Sabha, and at the beginning of the first session of each year. Now, Article 175 and 176 of the Constitution of India. Certain states have seen issues with respect to the address by a governor to the state legislature at the commencement of the first session of the year. Now, relevant articles. So, Article 175, right of governor to address or send messages to the house or houses at any time. Article 176, mandatory, unlike Article 175, a special address by governor at the commencement of the first session and after each general election. Okay, so governor will address when the after the commencement at the commencement of the first session after each general election and at the first session of each year, similar to the president. Okay. Address under Article 175 and 176 is to be performed by the governor on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. Okay, so Council of Ministers shall advise. Okay, so how many? I think two or three are left. So we'll speed up now. So 50 meeting of Pragati, so launched in 2015. Pragati, proactive governance and timely implementation, integrates accountability, transparency, and timely decision making into the administrative process. Key feature of Pragati, key features of Pragati. So multi-purpose and multi-model platform offering comprehensive technology-enabled governance mechanisms spanning all tiers of the government. Pragati meetings are Pragati review meetings are chaired by Prime Minister, having direct engagement with the state and central ministries. Host key governance tools like PM Gati Shakti Parivesh and PM reference portal. Objectives of Pragati: fast tracking critical infrastructure projects facing bottlenecks, improving outcomes of flagship welfare schemes showing suboptimal performance, and resolving citizen grievances across sectors. Now Pankundi portal. So Ministry of Women and Child Development launched Pankundi portal. About Pankundi portal, so it is an integrated corporate social responsibility CSR partnership facilitation single window digital platform. It brings together individuals and non-residents, NRIs, and non-governmental organizations, corporate entities, and government agencies. The portal streamlines and unifies voluntary and institutional contribution across key thematic areas including nutrition, health, early childhood care, and education, and child welfare, etc. Aim extending coordination, transparency, and structured stakeholder participation in initiatives for women and child development. Demographic transition in India. RBI report state finances, a study of budget of 2025-26, providing analysis of fiscal position of state governments and its implication for demographic transition. The demographic transition model DTP describes the shift from high birth or death rates to low birth or death rates as societies industrialize and develop. Key highlights of the report related to demographic transition in India: inflection point. With a median age of 28 years, working age population is at historic peak. Interstate in the divergence, youthful states with a high share of young population, that is Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, have a wider window of opportunity. Intermediate states, this is like Telangana, Uttarakhand, are seeing a narrowing window of opportunity. Aging states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu have crossed the demographic turning point, where share of working population has begun to decline. Now, fiscal implication of demographic transition on the state. So, shrinking tax base in aging states, shrinking labor force lowers long-term growth rates, thereby eroding tax base. Rising committed expenditure, aging states face upward pressure on committed expenditure, pensions, and interest payments. In 2024-25, aging states allocated nearly 30% of their social sector spending to pensions. Fiscal vulnerability, aging states have higher debt to yes. So all these things. So demographic winter. What is demographic winter? Describe a demographic phase characterized by a persistent and structural decline in population growth. Okay, so what is demographic winter? So it describes a demographic phase characterized by a persistent and structural decline in population growth. Persistent and structural decline. Okay, so when your demographic, when the population growth is persistent and structural decline, so it is declining constantly, continuously. So it is demographic winter. Winter key indicators include Bihar rates below the replacement rate of fertility 2.1, inverted population pyramid. Okay, so all these things. Now, expressional district program. So Niti Aayog launched the Sampurna Natha Abhiyan 2.0 to undertake a sustained effort to achieve saturation of key performance indicators in expressional districts and expressional blocks program. Both the programs have been launched by Niti Aayog. About expressional district program 2018, so aims to quickly and effectively transform to 112 districts across the country. Five themes: health and nutrition, education and agriculture, water resources, financing, inclusion and skill development and infrastructure. Progress in development and infrastructure. Progress in measured on 49 indicators of development, broad contours, convergence of central and state schemes, collaboration of central state level nodal officers and district collectors, and competition among districts through monthly delta ranking. Expression block program launched in 2023 aims for saturation of essential governance services in 513 blocks, 329 districts across the country. Now reports in news. So World Inequality Report 2026 released by World Inequality Lab. So World Inequality Report 2026 released by World Inequality Lab. Key findings of the report. So top 1% holds about 40% wealth in India, and top 10% hold around 65% of total wealth in India. Structural imbalance. Each year global south transfer more than 1% of world GDP to global north through debt service, profit repatriation, and financial flow, three times more than the developed aid. Employment and Social Trends 2026 report by the International Labour Organization. So Employment and Social Trends 2026 report released by International Labour Organization. The report has warned that the global unemployment rate is projected to remain at historically low of 4.9%. India-related finding: manufacturing sector. India accounts for 3% of world's manufacturing. India accounts for 3% of world's manufacturing jobs in renewable energy sector. Demand for green skill workers in India is more than the supply. Okay, so demand for green skill workers in India is more than the supply. Now is data. So in PTC article 1 vice question, it was given that 39 Amendment to the revoke the authority of the Supreme Court to so this clause was removed by 4497 the constitution would be 13. So there was a mistake that has happened by Vision IS article 103 office of the vice president. Okay, so this correct is the 39 constitutional amendment to the constitution remove the authority of the Supreme Court to aggregate petitions regarding the election of the president vice president. So they have made so Vision I has made some mistakes, so they are what the correct is this one that they have now given. Okay, so I hope we have been able to understand almost everything that is there. So we have started our discussion, so let us quickly revise all we have discussed or whatever we have discussed. So we have started our discussion with the Delimitation Commission, then PESA Acts, then Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, then RFCTLAR Act 2030, then Article Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation, then POXO Act 2012, then Viksit Bharat Shiksha Adhiniyam, then Supreme Court ruling on the right to education, then Convention against discrimination in education, then doping in sports in India, and then we also look at the other important news: electoral trust, presidency address, Article 175 and 176 of the Constitution of India, 15 meeting of Pragati and Panpudi portal, demographic transition in India, special district program, and reports in news. And the last is the mistake that has been published by the done by the organized and published also. Okay, so they have rectified their mistake. So in so the upcoming discussion we will doing the international relation, especially the multilateral organization starting from the G20 summit. Okay, so we'll do this in a separate video lecture. Thank you very much.